Hello guys, it's Dr. Thompson, the instructor of the DeTsquare OET Academy. The last time we discussed how to use commas and semicolons in OET writing. In this second episode, we'll be discussing how to use full stops, hyphens, and apostrophe in OET letter writing. If you are visiting my channel for the first time, I would advise you hit the subscribe button below so that anytime I release any tutorial, you will be the first to be notified. All right, so let's start with full stops. In letter writing or in any writing at all, we usually use full stops to end sentences. When we've completed our sentences, we use full stops to end them. For example, let's look at these statements. First, Mr. John smokes 2 packets of cigarettes. Mr. John is the subject, smokes is the verb, 2 packets of cigarettes is the object. Okay, so when we have sentences like this, especially a sentence with a noun or a subject and a verb, that means the sentence has a meaning. So even if you say Mr. John smokes, it's already a complete statement. So we can use a full stop to end this statement. Okay, but we cannot just write 2 packets of cigarettes. It's not a statement. So the reader will be expecting you to complete that statement if you just write 2 packets of cigarettes. So in that case, we are not to use full stop to end such a statement. And that statement does not have any verb. So this one has a subject and it has a verb. So, and it also has an object. That's why we completed the statement with a full stop. And this is just a simple sentence. Now, let's look at this second statement. She presented with a fever, cough, chest pain, but the symptoms have subsided. If you look at this complex statement here, or let's call it a compound statement here, you can see we actually have 2 sentences. First is she presented with a fever, cough, and chest pain. If we add a full stop here, it's fine. But we have now an independent statement, but the symptoms have subsided. But the symptoms have subsided is not a complete statement on its own, so we have to join it with this one. Or we can also reason it this way. The symptoms have subsided. The symptoms have subsided is a complete statement. Okay, it can actually stand on its own, but we want to join these 2 simple sentences to form a compound sentence. We use but. At the end of the sentence, we should use a full stop to end it. First, we use a comma to separate this complete statement. Use a conjunction to add this other complete statement with this first complete statement to form a more complete statement. So in this case, we use a full stop at the end. So let's look at some common errors that some persons do make. Look at this statement. Miss Jones reported having a fever, having a chest pain, fever, and cough. She was febrile with a temperature of 38.1 degrees Celsius, but the chest findings were unremarkable. A chest x-ray, full blood count, and liver function test were requested. She was then prescribed penicillin. This is a paragraph. If you look at this paragraph, something is wrong with this paragraph. There is no full stop at the end. I've seen writings like this. Sometimes students, they forget to end the last statement in their paragraph with a full stop, like in this case. So when you've ended your sentences or at the end of each paragraph, you should end it with a full stop. So please don't make this type of mistakes. Let's look at this. On these dates, Okay, let me bring this down here. On this date, Mr. White presented with a sore throat, fever, and cough. He was febrile and lethargic. Some tests were ordered, and he was treated with erythromycin. This statement is kind of confusing, and I've also seen students write something like this. This is supposed to be a paragraph, but if you look at this paragraph, the whole sentence is just one sentence. Because if you want to count the sentences here, you can just count it as only one, because you just have only one period or full stop at the end of this whole statement. But it's kind of a little quite confusing, because in this statement now you have like 3 sentences there, or 4. Let's count. On this date, Mr. White presented with a sore throat, fever, and cough. This is a complete statement on its own. Look at another statement. He was febrile and lethargic. This is another complete statement. Look at another one. Some tests were ordered. This is also a complete statement, although joined with another complete statement. And he was treated with erythromycin. So we can say this is a complete statement, starting from some tests were ordered, and he was treated with erythromycin, and a full stop was added, which is correct. But let's take a look at the first one. On this date, Mr. White presented with a sore throat, fever, and cough. There's supposed to be a complete, there's supposed to be a full stop here. Or because this first statement and this one, they are related, we can also use a semicolon here. Either we use a full stop here to end this statement, or we can use a semicolon here to join these 2 statements, and at the end, we'll place a full stop here. He was febrile and lethargic. Okay, so try to avoid writing a lot of sentences and you are using comma, 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 comma. The whole sentence becomes too complicated and confusing. Now let's look at this. All right, looking at this paragraph here, you can see, remember, wherever you add a full stop, it means this sentence it's already completed. Let's look at this paragraph. Miss Jones reported having a chest pain, fever, and cough. She was febrile, full stop, with a temperature of 38.8, but the chest findings were. So if you look at this paragraph, the sentences here, they're actually very difficult to read because of the poor punctuation, because of the poor use of full stops. Here, this full stop was added here, which is wrong. This full stop is not supposed to be here. She was febrile with a temperature of this. But when you now say she was febrile, the reader takes a rest. Okay, and now start again with a temperature of here again, but the chest findings, now the noun is cut off from the verb here, where. So this is also wrong. I've seen things like this. So when you are making a statement, there should be a subject and there should be a verb, and plus or minus an object before you can add full stops. For instance, let's take a look at the first sentence. Ms. Jones reported having a chest pain, fever, and cough. Here, Miss Jones is the subject, reported having is the verb, a chest pain, fever, and cough. They are the objects here. She was febrile. Well, this is a complete statement because it has a subject and a verb. Okay, but with a temperature of 38.1 degree, it's not a sentence. There is no verb. Okay, so this is supposed to be a continuum, but this candidate used a full stop to separate this statement. So learn to use the full stops correctly. Let's take a look at here again. The chest findings were unremarkable. Should have been the complete statement, but this a full stop was added here, making it very ambiguous to read. Okay, so I have this type of mistakes. They are not common, but I've seen students in my academy make this type of mistakes. So be mindful of how you use punctuations in OET letter writing. All right, so let's see. We can also use full stop to form abbreviations, like in these cases here. Professor, we want to abbreviate it to Prof, maybe Professor Anderson, Reverend Michael, Mr. Jones, Miss Jones, Mrs. Jones, Mr. Jones, okay, date of birth, okay. We can actually use punctuations to form abbreviations. When it comes to abbreviations, I've received questions from some students asking me, does OET accept this type of titles, or should I go with the punctuations? The truth is that whether you are going with this or you are going with this, they are both acceptable. Okay, in modern writing, they will subscribe to this, whereas some persons they've also argued, especially in the American type of writing, they go with this. So whether you go with this or you go with this, they are very, very correct. The same thing applies to this too. You can either write your date of birth this way because they feel that this is more fashionable and this is like old school. Any of them you use, they are all fine. So there is no any error here. All of them, they are all fine, and you can use it. A matter of choice. Let's look at apostrophe. We usually use apostrophe for possession, especially in OET letter writing. And this is just where we'll focus our discussion for today. Let's look at this. Mr. Collister's clinical condition is deteriorating. This type of place you use apostrophe. I've seen students, they will say Mr. Collister's clinical condition is deteriorating without apostrophe S. And most time when we are using apostrophe for possession, we add S, letter S to it to show possession. Okay, that means Mr. Collister is the owner of this clinical condition. Okay, and his clinical condition is deteriorating. So it's either we write Mr. Collister's clinical condition is deteriorating, or we can remove this and use possessive pronoun and say his clinical condition is deteriorating. So if you are using the noun form, you add apostrophe S. If you are using the pronoun, you can remove it. The possessive pronoun his can replace this. So whenever you are trying to write a kind of a possessive kind of statement, like in this case, you must use apostrophe for it. Look at here again. John's symptoms progressively worsened. John's symptoms progressively worsened. Here, these symptoms are for John. Or we can actually remove this now and replace it with his. His symptoms progressively worsened. So when you see things like this that you can replace and use his, that means it's actually possessive. So John is possessing these symptoms. You should add apostrophe and then S to show that possession. We can also use apostrophe for contractions, but in OET letter writing, you should avoid using contractions because OET letter writing is a formal writing. Okay, look at this example. So these type of things you should avoid in writing. Some candidates, instead of saying maybe I am writing to refer or something, they will say I'm writing to refer. This is wrong. Instead of saying he is, they write his. This is wrong. Any form of contraction at all, whether you want to say do not and you say don't, is wrong. Cannot, can't is wrong. Won't is wrong. Have. So you should always write it in their full forms. Don't use contractions in OET writing. Avoid them. All right, let's take a look at hyphens and see where we use them in OET letter writing. Usually we use them to form compounds, adjective, especially when we are using maybe date of birth or like a duration or something. Let's just take a look at the example here. So let's look at these examples. Look at the first example. A 25-year-old teacher. A 25-year-old teacher. Now, teacher is the noun, and these are the adjective, 25-year-old. We are trying to use it to qualify teacher. So what we are going to do, we are to make this age of this teacher to become a one-word adjective. In that case, we'll apply hyphen here, and say a 25-year-old teacher. Okay, if you look at here, there is no S in this age, because I've seen people even when they are using the hyphen correctly, they will add S here. That's wrong. So let's look at this in a statement. I'm writing to refer Miss White, a 25-year-old teacher whose clinical features are in keeping with diabetes mellitus. So we are using this to qualify teacher. And this a 25-year-old teacher is like extra information added to this sentence. That's why we use comma before and comma after to separate this piece of information. Because when this piece of information is removed from this sentence, the sentence will still stand and it will be correct. Let's try it. I'm writing to refer Miss White, whose clinical features are in keeping with diabetes mellitus. So when you see things like this, when you add extra information in a sentence, you use a comma before it and comma after that. If you want to learn more about that, you can watch the first episode of this series of tutorials on punctuations. Look at this one too. She presented with a 2-week history of fever. 2-week history of fever is the noun here. We are using the duration to as an adjective to qualify this history of fever. So in that case, we'll place a hyphen here to make this two to become a word. Let's look at common mistakes. The common mistakes that some students make, I've highlighted this one before. They add S here and there is no article here. Okay, now this like the common mistake that some students usually make, especially in the heading. Because we've said you hyphenate to make the age one word, they will bring it up in the heading, which is not correct. If you're writing heading like this is wrong. Hyphenating this heading, because you're not using it here as an adjective to qualify anything. So you adding hyphen here, it's not correct. Look at the second one. So the first one, there is even double error there. Here now, this is not just correct. These two, they are not correct. So when you're writing your heading, do not add hyphens here. And there should be S in the years, because you're not using it here as an adjective. You are using it here to state the patient's age. So in this case, you should say 25 years old and not written this way. Let's look at it in the statement. Look at another error. Some persons, they forget to add the second hyphen here and they add S here, pluralize this one. This is also very wrong, because in this case you are giving this another meaning, as if you are using 25 years to qualify an old teacher. So that's the meaning you are giving to this statement. So be careful on whenever you are using these hyphens. Let's look at these statements in the correct form. This is how it should look like. Miss Samantha Jones, a 25-year-old teacher who has bilateral conjunctivitis and her condition is deteriorating. She would need your urgent assessment and treatment. So this is used correctly here. No S here. Hyphen is added in the appropriate places. Okay, we'll come to the end of this episode, this second episode of the use of punctuations. And if you like my tutorials, please hit the subscribe button, like my videos, and also share with others. Thank you very much, guys. If you want to reach me, you can reach me via this either through Telegram, WhatsApp, or you can call, or you can email me. You can also visit my Instagram and Twitter for more tutorials. All right, guys. Love you guys. Bye.